And I said, I want to find my dad's old car. So I hunted for about a year, and then I found it, and I had my father drive it. He was the first one to drive it after we restored it. So his name's back on the logbook again. I just thought that was kind of neat. It's a 1966 Yenko Stinger. It was produced by Don Yenko out of Canonsburg, Pennsylvania.
Don Yenko, only son of Frank and Marty, genius IQ, 164, quite precocious, and since he was an only child and his parents were pretty well off, they indulged him, whatever he wanted to do. Get him an airplane, buy him cars.
He had a dream to go road racing. He'd been road racing Corvettes, and he saw this car produced and thought it would make a great car. But SCCA wouldn't allow a four-seater car in the group he wanted to run in. So he talked to him and found out you had to build 100 cars to homologate them in. So he got a hold of Chevrolet, and he bought 100 white Corvettes. Don put this little panel in here to absorb a lot of the rear window, so it looked like a 2+2 car or something like that effect of the era.
And they took a car that would barely crack 100 miles an hour. And in 1967 on the banking at Daytona, we went 147 miles an hour.
Well, they originally had 140 horsepower and the race cars supposedly had 240. So it was a big change. And it really worked because in 1967, it won the championship. Since the engine is in the back, we have to have an oil cooler up in the front. So if you look here, we were allowed to take where the license plate goes and cut a hole in it and use that to duct air into an oil cooler. So instead of the 4.5 standard, we have almost 10 quarts of oil, and it stays a lot cooler that way. That allows this engine to survive, making an extra 100 horsepower. My father, he was running a sports racer, and he said, I want a Stinger. So we started on a hunt for a Stinger. So we drove down to Tennessee and we picked up this car, and I was 4 years old. He raced it for about 10 years, and at that point he said, I've done all I can do with it. So he sold it, and then my wife and I, about 2009, decided we wanted to go vintage racing. And I said, I want to find my dad's old car. So I hunted for about a year, and then I found it. And I had my father drive it. He was the first one to drive it after we restored it. So his name's back on the logbook again. I just thought that was kind of neat. This was the air intake from the stock Corvair. These flaps that Don put on here allowed a lot more horsepower or air to get into the engine to create more horsepower. And if you look at the dash on my car, there's a tag on there that says flaps up, balls out. And the flaps up obviously means these flaps, but Don also had velocity stacks on top of the carburetors, and to keep stuff from falling in, Dad always had 4 little balls in there. Every once in a while, you try to start the car and it'd suck them in, so he had to have that tag up there to say, flaps up, balls out.